Добрий день, я вітаю.
Hello everyone, I'm Olha Tamanova and it's a pleasure to welcome you to Ukrinform Media Center today. This is the 11th year of war, 830 years since the full-fledged invasion of the Russian aggressor to our land, and we have invited you today to discuss a very difficult topic for our society, namely the captivity 2 years from now, and how to save the Ukrainian soldiers and take them out of the Russian captivity. Today with us is Maria Alekseevich, wife of a twice wounded defender of Mariupol, who works in NGO Olenivka community. Also with us today, Hanna Lobova, wife of a twice wounded defender of Mariupol, another representative of Olenivka community NGO. Tetyana Katrychenko, Media Initiative for Human Rights, and Andriy Yakovlev, Media Initiative for Human Rights. On May the 5th, yesterday, we have celebrated the 10th anniversary since Azov was established, and unfortunately it coincides with the 2 years date when a lot of our soldiers, boys and girls, stay in captivity. So Hanna probably will start with you. What's the situation today? What do we know? Are there any news from them? And if we do know, then what's the state right now of our defenders, boys and girls? Well, hello, I am Hanna Lobova, the wife of a very gravely wounded defender of Mariupol in Olenivka, but on June the 17th there will be 2 years of honorable captivity for him. And today we decided to discuss the point that for 1 year now not a single Azov regiment soldier has been exchanged. So until then 807 Ukrainian soldiers have been exchanged, but there is none Azov soldier among them for the last year. And the big question is why. We have met with the Ombudsman for Human Rights, with his staff on numerous occasions, with the coordination headquarters executives, with the President Office Chief, but there's still no answer to our main question. Well, we know that this is the position of the Russian Federation. Well, that's not the response that could suit us any longer. A couple of days ago, I gave an interview. They asked me a question, quite an important one, and I would like to respond to it here today as well. Did the state do a lot and enough to liberate all of the Azov-style defenders who are in captivity now? Well, we, their families, don't know the exact steps what the state did or is doing, because this whole process is walled off from the relatives. All we know, at hearing it at the meetings, that the position of the Russian Federation not to free them. So I cannot give the clear answer yes or no to that question. But if we go back to the events of June the 16th, 2023, and we remember the news on United Marathon 24, there Hanna Mahler, the president of Ukraine, promised that our relatives would be evacuated and that then they will be exchanged, and that there are countries that would guarantee that their lives would be saved and that they will be exchanged later, and that there is the UN and that the Red Cross knows about this, and that's what the government officials claimed. And based on those promises, I can say no, the government didn't meet their promises in respect to all of the military defenders of Azovstal who were leaving that plant. Another issue is that relatives often enough are being told, you can see in social media or responses from the government authorities, including the consultants of the coordination headquarters. What do you know that? What do you want then? That all of them should die there? Well, I'd like us to go back to the beginning of the full-fledged invasion. Mariupol has not been fully encircled since the very first days of the full-fledged invasion. The military could have easily left the city. Who is responsible that they had to stay in the city, had to carry on with the order to defend the country? I don't know the name of that person who gave that order. There was a way out, but then it's clear. The soldiers are keeping the unreally tough assault. They are not giving up. They continue doing their duties. The fact that their only salvation would be captivity, and then third countries helping to exchange for them. Well, of course, there's a very sad date, one of the sad dates in the defense of Mariupol, the night from the 14th to 15th of April 2022. That was, and Russian news hasn't covered this. There was a huge infiltration from the right bank to Azovstal, and the column of our military troops has been shot from close distance, and we had colossal casualties. The relatives knew about this, the military personnel in Mariupol knew about this, but the rest of Ukraine didn't know that. Didn't they want to live? Of course they wanted to live. And if they believe that the captivity is to be saved, well, then they would have made this decision much earlier. Then we need to keep repeating that they have been carrying out the orders of the top brass. And of course, the way of getting the troops out of Azovstal, that whole process is shrouded in secrecy. We don't know who is agreeing with whom about what. What we know is the information that was shared with the military people. 3 or 4 months of captivity with normal conditions. 3 to 4 months. In 10 days' time, we'll have 2 years now. I am extremely grateful to former Azovstal defenders who have been freed and who, in their interviews, tell exactly who gave this order, that it stated this term of 3 to 4 months. And in one of the recent interviews, the question was asked, was it the correct decision to for the defenders to give up and not to continue fighting? And he said, no, for me, the captivity was 4 months. That was saving my life. For the others, captivity was also saving lives. But what about those of my brothers in arms who are still there? I'm grateful to a sailor who, despite his difficult rehabilitation, comes to meetings and urges to save all of the captives. A couple of days ago, Barak 200 Alive, that's the documentary of 200 prisoners who survived in that barrack, and the sailor said in Russian, don't forget the boys. When the tragedy happened, everybody was shouting, the whole Ukraine is Azov, but now it's not the case. Don't forget those who died. Don't forget those who are in captivity, because it's thanks to them that the whole of Ukraine survived. And I subscribe to each and every word of this, because my family has been touched by the tragedy of Mariupol, and then in Olenivka. It's a personal pain of mine that I still feel. And unfortunately, there are certain issues where the country, the government authorities could be fighting, for instance, the day of commemoration of soldiers who were killed in Olenivka. And after long discussions, we agreed that it should be a general day of commemoration of all of those who were killed in captivity. And the only obstacle right now is Nikita Poturaev. It shouldn't be like that. If you held such high positions, well, at least listen to what the military personnel are saying, or those who know what's happening at the front lines. Time is changing all of us, and when they say the households need support, well, I don't know who needs the help. Who needs the help most would be those who are in captivity right now. I'm not sure who is involved in this negotiation process at all, but I suggest to them to, at least for one day, not talk to their loved ones for one day, not to use their phone, not to ask, how are you doing, is everything okay, even though you would know that they're alive. But for us, it's 2 years of not being know what's going on. So nobody has united the families of those who died in Olenivka. 6 months later, we brought ourselves together, and the first meeting with the secretary of the coordination headquarters happened after 8 months of waiting. We were waiting for 8 months just to talk to a person. So this situation is still like that. We, of course, need to have another meeting, but they refuse to meet us by their secretary. And is it realistic to save Azov people? Well, the whole all of the commanders, not only of Azov regiment, but all of the commanders, all of the officers were saved. But it's the rank and file that we need to save now, and for that we ask the government to give us the right to go abroad to influential countries that are involved in the exchange of prisoners, prisoner swaps, and to show them what's happened in Olenivka. And at that time, we had some countries that guaranteed the safe future of our loved ones, but in these 2 years, these people were staying hungry, not only for 2 years, but during the time of defense of Mariupol. Just look at the photos. These are just bones and skin.
Якщо зараз.
Skin and bones, and 4 months of starvation, and then 2 years of captivity. The representative of the coordination headquarters claimed to me that the body, the organism, can adapt to such conditions. Well, and body could adapt to anything, but it's abnormal, of course. And as to the whether we know any information about our relatives, no. We find ourselves in complete information vacuum, because the only information that comes to us are those who have been freed or released, and through their relatives we might learn something about what's going on there. So we have no such information available to us, and it's very difficult for us to actually track where are those wounded during the explosion in the barracks. The latest information we learned is that there's a boy who refused his hand to be cut off. But he cannot use that arm. There are other amputees, people with multiple wounds, some of them still seriously wounded, and they're still in captivity. Maria, I'm sure you have something to add about gravely wounded. Do you have any information about who are still there, or probably learning from those who were released from captivity before. And as for the international organizations like the Red Cross, when our defenders were agreeing for captivity, did their role or their attitude change? Did our government, our NGOs help them to increase their presence and thus get more information through them? Well, hello, and first of all, I would like to thank everyone who came here today to listen to this very painful topic and to support us. As has been mentioned today already, yesterday there was a very important date, the 10th year of anniversary of creating legendary Azov. For all those 10 years, Azov proved how motivated this unit is, how they love their motherland, and that they're ready to lose their lives for their country. And they show not only Ukraine but the whole world how brave and dignified they are. In all those 10 years that Azov is defending our country, for almost 2 years, some of the Azov defenders are under inhumane conditions in captivity, under tortures. When they evacuated into captivity in 2022, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on May the 17th published the post I would like to read. Defending Azovstal, they disallowed the enemy to allow 17 battalion tactical groups, about 20,000 personnel, to other front, and thus they disallowed Zaporizhzhia to be captured, and getting the enemy all the way to Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhzhia borders, and freezing the enemy forces around Mariupol around us, allowed us to create defense fortifications, which our defenders are still defending now. We received critically important time to form reserves, to regroup our forces, and to receive support from partner countries. After such statements, I would like to ask, is it fair that all of the defenders of Mariupol, not only Azov soldiers, are still in captivity? They gave enough time for Ukraine in the first months of the full-fledged invasion. They performed heroics in Mariupol for all of us to be able to stay alive and to be able to fight the enemy back. When before the September the 21st, 2022, the first exchange, everybody was talking about Azov-style defenders, because when they made statements that this is a vacation into captivity, the authorities and the officials claimed that this is special operation to save lives, and until the last defender comes back to the controlled territory, this operation is continued ongoing. So 2 years since then, nobody was talking about those defenders in the government institutions, because if you remember, May 22 through September 22, that's when the journalists kept asking the president, Andriy Yermak, office of the president, all of the government authorities, where are what are the whereabouts of the Azov defenders? Can we get in touch with them? Do we know anything about them? But let me remind you that the predominant majority of Azov defenders, Azov-style defenders, are still in captivity. And unfortunately, after the terrorist act in Olenivka, we, the families of people who suffered and got injured there, and learned nothing afterwards. I've seen some videos, but I haven't seen my husband since September 2022, when I seen him for 50 seconds at Russian publics, and that's it. Since then, no information has been given to the families of the prisoners of war. Does the government make enough effort to bring them back home? I believe, as of today, no. That's the bitter truth. We, the families, are being constantly ignored by the state. And let me tell about the meeting with Andriy Yermak and Kirill Budanov, which happened January the 4th, 2024. We publicly mentioned this meeting, but we haven't mentioned all of the details, of course. At this meeting, it was stated by us that we need the government's help, the assistance from the state of Ukraine to bring them back home, to go, for us to go abroad, to visit those countries who are involved in the prisoner swaps, who can use some leverage against Russia to bring them back home. And Andriy Yakovlev said, when it's possible, we will be involved in such visits. 4 months later, nobody has got in touch with us yet. Also, we spent lots of time at that meeting to the details around the terms and conditions of release, who was the guarantors, who agreed with whom. And Kirill Budanov said that we don't know everything, we don't know a lot, and you would not be ready to hear the truth. We unanimously said, of course we want to hear that. Give us this. It's a special meeting from Kirill Budanov and Andriy Yakovlev, and they said, yeah, of course, we will do the meeting with you, but off the record. But since then, nobody contacted us. Also, at that meeting, Andriy Yakovlev told us that we don't fully understand how tough it is to exchange the prisoners of war, and that the coordination headquarters would not refuse us if one of our representatives will try to get involved in this process from A to Z, from negotiations to the actual prisoner swap. We thought about this. We have selected a person who is ready to do that. We got in touch with the coordination headquarters, and they told us no. They told us it's impossible, that we can be invited only when the actual exchange happens, and that we can talk to them in the hospital, but that's not what we agreed before. So the big question is why the representatives of the coordination headquarters are refusing us. But at that meeting with Andriy Yakovlev, they have not refused his offer to do it this way.
Боку повторно звернулися до офісу президента із запитом для того.
We have requested from the office of the president to conduct the same format of the meeting as we had in January 2024 to discuss the current status quo, because nothing has been resolved so far. In addition to this, a week ago, on the 29th of April 2024, President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, in his evening address, claimed that in respect of the prisoner swaps, well, I don't remember it verbatim, but it was something like, we need to have clarity about each name, and that the families should know everything about their loved ones in captivity, and they should know what's happening in light of the efforts to liberate them. But this is not happening, let alone the names. And almost 2 years ago, the terrorist act in Olenivka happened, and the names of 193 names who were killed and maimed at that time are not known to any government institution. Well, and it's not clear how to resolve it, because the government authorities don't want to talk to our NGO that much. We'd also like to remind you who agreed about the release from Azovstal: the President of Ukraine, the Office of the President. The President, in his interview on May the 21st, 2022, said that Turkey, Israel, Switzerland, and France leaders were involved in getting our defenders out of Azovstal, and that UN and Red Cross were involved as well. In order to save the Mariupol defenders, I believe we need to get in touch with those countries, and it should not be done at the level of us, family members. Of course, we would never be allowed any high-profile meetings. We need the support of the Office of the President, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, President of Ukraine, all of the government institutions who are ready to get involved in this. We need the assistance to tell the whole world about the fact that Russia is a cruel enemy that constantly kills the prisoners of war, and that something like Olenivka could happen again, and that the whole world should unite to save our defenders. And in addition to the office of the president and Volodymyr Zelensky personally, on site in Mariupol, there were a couple of people who were involved in those negotiations with the Russians. The secretary of the coordination headquarters, Dmitro Usov, the MP, Alexander Kovalyov, and Azov commander Denis Prokopenko. At the meeting with Dmitro Usov, he always tells us, liberating the soldiers who became captives after they left Azovstal. That's his personal task, but it's almost 2 years and almost all of them are still in captivity. How come? I believe that all of those who one way or another are involved in giving the order for our defenders to leave Azovstal into captivity, it's their duty to bring them back home. We're talking about the lives of those people. Of course, they claim that all of them will come back home at some point of time, but we demand that it should happen immediately, and hopefully it does happen fast in respect of those who were wounded in Olenivka and those defenders who left Azovstal under order. Those who gave that order, it will be their dignity and honor to do exactly as we ask them to do. Yeah, thank you, Maria. We understand that this is an uphill battle. It's hard to argue, and I'd like to believe that there are some ongoing talks and negotiations, and probably nobody could be informed about this, neither us or you, but let's hope that the talks are going on. Maria, I have another question to you. What we could do, the Ukrainian citizens, to help in this process, because we know that weekly we conduct the nationwide events at noon when people come together, gather and unite to support the relatives of prisoners of war. What else we as the society could do in this respect? Well, the Ukrainian society is doing a lot for the prisoners of war to be remembered, and those events are extremely important because it unites people around this topic, namely huge Mariupol defenders, especially from Azov regiment, are still in captivity, and in order to bring them back home, unfortunately, this support is not enough. Like I stated before, we need the support from the government, from the authorities. For 2 years, we're trying to do something here inside of Ukraine. We try to remind about them, interviews, briefings, events, happenings, but it's not enough, as we can see. We need to travel to the countries that, according to Volodymyr Zelensky, were involved in the negotiations for release, to ask them again to help those people to bring them back home this time. And finally, to address with pleas to the countries who were involved before: Turkey, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, because they have been involved in those prisoner swaps before, but we don't know who they were swapping for. Well, we need to ask for the wounded, first of all, the Azov regiment soldiers, and those who left Azovstal under direct order. And I also believe that it's the job of the country to involve as many third parties as possible to save the Azovstal defenders, because we still don't know how much strength they have left, how much time they can wait until they are exchanged. Tetyana, the question to you is, well, activists, proactive citizens, all the caring people, we recognize how loaded with pain is this topic, but we should also recognize that it's all about this criminal authority in Kremlin. So what else could we do to force them, bring our defenders back home? Well, our media initiative is studying the status of all of our prisoners of war before the full-fledged invasion and afterwards, and it's my pleasure to be here today because our team deals with Olenivka, with Azov, with prisoners of war all that time. But sometimes when I listen to the girls, I think about myself. It's almost as if I should step in and respond in place of the government institutions and authorities. Well, generalizing all that we've heard so far, not only about those soldiers who were in the barracks in Olenivka under the explosion, in the next door barracks, according to our ballpark estimates, about 10,000 servicemen of Ukraine are in the Russian Federation's captivity. These are most optimistic assessments. And most of them are kept at the temporarily occupied territories, others at the territory of the Russian Federation. And those prisoners of war have been dispersed all across the Russian Federation in different remand prisons and colonies. How many have been placed into captivity from Mariupol? Well, we don't know, because Russia does not give us the clear figures of how many Ukrainian soldiers they keep in captivity. That's why it's difficult to come up with this accurate list. But there are different estimates, 3,000 to 5,000. That's the garrison of Mariupol that were captured, who were defending in March, April, May 2022. The defenders of Azovstal included not only Azov regiment, but border guards, the National Guards, soldiers, Marines of the 36th Brigade that made the breakthrough to Azovstal in April 2022. So we cannot exactly say how many were made captive in mid-May. But what we know for sure is that in Olenivka, 2 barracks have been allocated for Azovstal defenders. Each barrack capacity was 600, so 1,200 could be the total number. Also, well, the wounded were prisoned first, and they got into the hospitals, and we got some evidence from those of our soldiers who were in Olenivka started being transferred almost immediately to the Donetsk SIZO, which is trial remand prison. So close to 1,500 probably defenders were captured from Azovstal. On the 21st of September 2022, the first batch of Azovstal defenders were released. Some of them were from the barracks at the time of explosion, and the last prison swap that involved Azov defenders was in May 2023. After that, according to our information, not a single Azov regiment soldier have been exchanged. Where are they now? It's tough to say. All we know is all Azov defenders were taken out of Olenivka back in 2022. Most of them were transferred either to the territory of Taganrog, SIZO, pre-trial remand prison that's at the territory of the Russian Federation. Some of them were transferred to Donetsk SIZO, and now we know that lots of them are in the occupied Gorlivka and the local colony. It's a very difficult topic indeed. Exactly because of high-level public promises that the Azovstal defenders would be returned back home fast, that this is honorary captivity, but actually that this is evacuation. But 2 years passed, and we recognize that these were just words that were uttered spontaneously, just to explain how this happened. How did it happen that the order was given that most of the defenders were captured? Our NGO supports the families of prisoners of war, especially those from Barrack 200, as it was known. 200 is because initially 200 people were transferred there, then some of them were taken out, and at the time of explosion there were 193 there. Well, observing this process inside out and sometimes from the outside, because we talk a lot to the released prisoners, we learn from them that this is not a linear process, that it's usually done ad hoc. There is no typical approach how to release 100, 200 prisoners. But since the government gave the promise, it has to deliver, especially by involving the third countries, because there are no direct talks between Ukraine and Russia, well-known fact. But saving the Ukrainians, either military or civilians, could be done only with the help of the third parties. And of course, there is a peace plan of Volodymyr Zelensky, 10 bullets, and the fourth bullet is the return of all of the citizens of Ukraine. And we know that this bullet number 4 involves people from many more countries, not only Turkey, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, but also Norway and Canada, that are also partially involved in the process of the release of Ukrainian citizens. And one would think that such a strong coalition of countries could help Ukraine, all of the Azovstal defenders and Azov regiment soldiers, and those who survived the explosion in the Olenivka in July 2022. And now, Andriy, the question to you. In respect of the events that happened in Olenivka, what's the status of the investigation? Have we involved the international community in this effort? Can we even talk about this? How else can we ensure that the fair punishments will find the perpetrators, that they receive their due? Hello again, and let me start by saying that there are two sides of the coin, the domestic and the external sides. In order for the release to happen, we need to have also the actions or the agreement to act on the part of our enemy. And we know that the enemy doesn't want to release anyone. That's why we have such low figures. I mean, even the optimistic forecast that we still have almost less than a dozen thousand prisoners of war in captivity, and what we can do, not only joint efforts internally, but also involve external counterparts for investigating war crimes committed. Not only to punish those who perpetrated those crimes, to ensure fair punishment, but also to impact the future by making it never happen again. And I would break down Olenivka episode in three parts. First, the terrorist act, the explosion. The second episode, what happened afterwards, because no medical assistance have been provided for hours to come, and lots of wounded died because of them. It was forbidden to give first aid. Actually, only in violation of international humanitarian law and the customs and rules of war, they allowed this to happen, not providing needed medical assistance. And finally, the third episode, the treatments of those who have not been released, and their treatment and the conditions of their stay, according to UN, that stated on a couple of occasions that tortures happen there. It's systemic and a phenomenon, and that it's applied hierarchically, which means that there is a hierarchically supported practice tolerated by the top-level authorities in Russia, and all we need to prove in that this is an existing practice. And then we can urge to start the new international investigation, issuing new international arrest warrants, because the top brass, the civilian and military commanders, are responsible and liable not only for direct orders, but also in the situations when they knew about what was going on, but did nothing about this. And after the reports from the United Nations, when the international experts were not allowed access to the CSOR, and this denial could happen only from higher-ups, which actually only proves that they also are responsible for this tragedy. So if we legally prove and then present this case at the international arena, it might result in the improvement of the current state of the prisoners of war. Of course, it would be great if we can release them overnight, but unfortunately they're still there, and our job is to improve their conditions of stay. Even if we cannot bring them back home right now, we can at least say that their conditions are better, that there are no instances of tortures, and it could be done, because when prisoners of war are in the prison, they have all the same rights. Only the right for freedom is taken away from them. And I also believe that this is how we can influence Russia to at least stop using systemically tortures. Well, the UN has issued numerous reports, but everybody ignores them, which means that tortures are being tolerated. Well, we cannot claim right now who gave those orders, but the fact that they don't put a stop to it, that by default shows that they are aiding and abetting. So the more we talk about this, the more we raise this issue, the more liable would become top Russian officials in those tortures. And if the International Criminal Court will launch this case, it might reduce the level of tortures, or at least help achieve that. Something when we can at least assist in the conditions of their stay. And yeah, it's true that Russian prisoners of war have the right to communicate with their prisoners, while ours are denied that. And it's easy to arrange this, and then we can control the tortures. And this is the recipe. First, the world needs to push through criminal cases or investigations or negotiators, and then providing communications channels, allowing to learn what's the status with the tortures, and hopefully making sure that finally they started being treated in compliance with international humanitarian laws. Well, I have an impression today that we are in a vicious circle here. On the one hand, we have representatives of the government of Ukraine, and I understand all of the well, we don't know who's involved in those talks and negotiations. And all the Ukrainian society could do is only exercise pressure on our authorities. But Russia, the aggressor country, we can not exercise any pressure on them. And all is left are those partners of ours, third countries, third parties that could exercise such pressure on the aggressor country. So how could we speed it up? How to make sure that these countries, third countries, are involved? Today we heard a couple of times that meetings happened with the representatives of the Ukrainian government authorities at the highest level, in the office of the president, with the coordination headquarters. There is a problem with setting a task. The task of the Ukrainian authorities is to shape the objective and bring it to the international partners and tell them, we need your help, because we cannot handle it on our own. So we have this plan, and this plan. We don't know which one could work out. Probably you have your own plans. Let's discuss them and find the negotiators. And we understand that this is something that the Ukrainian state can do, with a number of success stories before the release of the Azov style commanders in particular. That's where certain misunderstanding might be happening, right? On the other hand, we also recognize that this is an ongoing war here in Ukraine, which causes a number of parallel challenges that the country at large should deal with. And I personally heard about the number of killed and wounded and those who need to be rehabilitated, and how many prisoners of war we have, and we try to follow all of those tracks. But again, there's still no clear objective formulated by the governments. If they treat it as something that, if not could be done, if not overnight, but tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, and they find a pool of those who would constantly be working on this. So that's probably the recipe that I can follow. from the overarching strategy, as Tetyana correctly mentioned, we need to involve as many external counterparts as possible, strategically. But tactically, we also need to reduce the suffering of our prisoners, because torture is a fact. So we can reduce it through advocacy, including international advocacy, but still, I would hope for international criminal court. The case of torture in particular, this is the crime against humanity, and hopefully the arrest warrants could be issued for the top brass from Russian Federation and to CISO commandant. Well, of course, what we are talking about today is something that we've been discussing for the last 2 years, and if you don't raise the problems, they would not be resolved. Our NGO has issued the request in January 2024 to the embassies of Ukraine to some of the countries to help us raise awareness about Olenivka tragedy and Azov style defenders in captivity, so that they can talk to the authorities of those countries where they're working as diplomats, helping to release them and helping to launch the investigation of this terrorist act. We wrote 50 letters and we received 6 responses, not even a dozen. And half of those responses were talk to the coordination headquarters and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and according to the coordination headquarters, they've been authorized to do that since February 2024, which only shows that there is not that there is insufficient level of coordination if the relatives, together with the authorities, start working together, only then we can reach the results we've been discussing today. In respect of the events that are being conducted, well, it was not our NGO that initiated this nationwide happening. I mean, we might be organizers or co-organizers at the local level, yes, but the idea is to run those events focusing not on the authority, but focusing on the ordinary citizens. Don't keep silent. The captivity kills. How to help the relatives? Keep talking about the prisoners of war. If you start talking about them, you'll start thinking about them. How are they doing? Where they are? What are they eating? Just imagine, at any minute now, we can go and drink water. They have no such opportunity. They are limited in everything, in simple communication. Well, summing up, I would like to urge the people who are responsible for this exchange. Starting from January 2024, the exchanges, prisoner swaps, have been relaunched, and within an hour you can see the list of those prisoners. And this year we've seen not only the names, but it was also written deserter. Just imagine how the families read it about the people who were ordered to stop fighting. They were bombed in captivity, and now they're called deserters. Well, of course, the investigation will show exactly what's happened, but first, please bring back the notion of fairness, and the promises need to be met. Thank you, and it's true, this is the pain that we all need to somehow figure out how to deal with it and how to resolve it. Hopefully, after this meeting, all of us would think more what else could be done by us to help our defenders to come back home. Colleagues, back to you. Asepchuk from Fakty newspaper. Quite recently, at a press conference, you stated that the Russian Federation refuses to qualify Ukrainian prisoners of war as prisoners of war. And at that time, Bogdan Slobodyan, the former prisoner, was present there, and he said all of them were qualified as persons who prevent the special military operation. Well, the prevention of military operation, is it a criminal charge by their laws? Do they have the right to keep our prisoners imprisoned? Well, good question indeed. The Russian Federation is not following Geneva Conventions, and all they claim they're doing, they are holding people for preventing the military, special military operation, which puts those people in a legal vacuum because the international law is based on the facts. It doesn't matter what they think about it. It's important how it's being qualified. So is it a crime or not? We can say that they truly conduct trials, court trials against Azov defenders in particular. But they usually state that the court trial is against terrorists or those who were involved in terrorist group. And again, they do it because the whole world knows that terrorism is a dangerous phenomenon. But by them, according to them, a person, by virtue of being the soldier of Azov regiment, in order to instigate the criminal case and start the proceedings, they don't need to prove that this person perpetrated a terrorist act. No, they qualify terrorists differently. They look at their lists of those organizations that qualify as terrorist organizations, and that's what they put people on trial for. And they started those trials already.
Army veteran, and my prayers are with your loved ones. I pray for their release as soon as possible. I'm wondering if the International Red Cross could be urged to do a welfare check, and are there any celebrities who are championing the plight of these prisoners? Sometimes celebrities can raise more awareness internationally.
Питання щодо
The question was about the Red Cross, whether they could celebrity, the opinion leaders. Red Cross is a very important organization that could have been a mediator, go-between, and it was doing that in some occasions. And the Red Cross does provide us with information about what happens with the prisoners of war, because all the Russians are doing, they should register all the prisoners of war and communicate this to the relatives. And the Red Cross is involved in this, but they're not doing this personally on site. They're not visiting the sites of detention, and we don't have proof of that, at least. But the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation gives them the list of those whom the Russians qualified as prisoners of war. Could we somehow let the Red Cross increase their efforts? Yeah, of course, but there are a couple of issues here. Well, this organization follows its own policy by not sharing the information about what they're doing, and they're saying we're not communicating what we achieved and what we haven't achieved. The second problem is the Red Cross cannot come to the Russian Federation or visit the temporarily occupied territories. They are not allowed access there. So the problem is not what the Red Cross could have done, and they would have not been asked to do that. Physically, it's impossible for them to do something when the Russians don't allow them to come and visit them. But I personally believe that when you make some statements and people believe that you can resolve certain problems, well, you should make your efforts visible. And when the boys come back, are released from the captivity, they can say, yeah, the Red Cross was caring for us, we've seen people from there. But as it happens now, the Red Cross people could do nothing about what's going on, but they tell us nothing about what they're doing. And that's why the biggest problem is that nobody knows what they're doing. Somehow, people still believe that the Red Cross could be efficient. I don't believe so. Well, I think I know what you were asking about. Can the International Red Cross involve some celebrities or raise the awareness about Olenivka through celebrities and thus guarantee the visits to the detention sites? Well, of course, if we come to our authorities and make them this suggestion, but then we need to get the agreement from the Russians as well, because if this celebrity is not in agreement with the Russians, it will not get there. If the Ukrainian counterparts would not agree on a celebrity, then it would look like what we've witnessed before, a new celebrity coming and making an interview in Russia. But if some celebrities really want to help the defenders and Ukrainian defenders, of course, we believe that the Red Cross should be involved and could be involved in helping us learn more about what's happening with our relatives. Well, I would like to add to this. My husband is in captivity for almost 2 years, but I place no hope on international organizations. I believe they exhausted themselves. And that's why, of course, we need to think through various options and different ideas, but I lost those hopes that Red Cross would ever come and visit my husband in captivity. Again, we need to involve leaders of the third countries. Well, on Red Cross, Andriy was quite diplomatic in making his statement, but we've been interviewing hundreds of the released prisoners of war, and very rarely they say they saw a Red Cross representative at any point of their captivity. And nobody says that they've been personally visited in colonies or CISOs. And secondly, when we talk about the involvement of the International Red Cross in this military armed conflict, what we observe, the Red Cross performs a certain function, but their efforts are not enough, and sometimes they are obviously sabotaging certain processes which they otherwise should have been controlling, or at least be aware about those processes. And yeah, Red Cross performs unpublicly, savoring its status of neutrality, working for this side and that side. But if we look at the previous track record of the Red Cross involvement in military conflicts, well, they are not being involved virtually in this conflict compared to the involvement in previous ones. And when we raise it with the Red Cross people, look, you can come to the colony, people are dying there, they bring the corpses of the Ukrainian soldiers, and so they've been in a colony, and then the family receives a black plastic bag. So what happened to that prisoner of war in that colony? Was he killed? Did he die from some disease or wounds? Again, the remains come in such poor status that it's impossible to conduct any expertise. And the Red Cross people tell us, we have a mandate and we can do only this, and that. But what you're asking us is something that we might consider visiting the prisoners of war, but there are many more refugees than prisoners of war. There are many more internally displaced persons than prisoners of war. We bring humanitarian aid to all those civilians and to the Russian prisoners of war. And if we make the statement that the Russian Federation doesn't allow us to get access to the colonies, Red Cross people tell us, then the Russian Federation will prevent us and stop us from doing great work in helping other Ukrainians and other citizens of Russian Federation. So they're not even hiding the fact that they cannot even say out loud, and they don't want to make this statement, and thus they no longer stay quite neutral, because if they stay neutral, then they would say, yeah, for straight 2 years they do not allow us access to this colony, and we have numerous evidence that people die there. They are not allowing us to see gravely wounded. So speaking about the involvement of the Red Cross, we need to claim that, unfortunately, they are not delivering as good a work as they did in Bosnia, for instance, when the Red Cross was involved in negotiations and the exchange of the lists for prison swaps. They're not working in this capacity now. While how to involve the celebrities, well, I don't believe we can involve celebrities through a Red Cross because of their neutral status. But of course, the Ukrainian authorities should be involving celebrities, especially in carrying out this bullet 4 of peace plan. And my last question is about the fact that we heard that for the whole straight year, not a single Azov regiment soldier has been released. What's the rationale behind this decision? Is it because of all the brainwashing that happened in Russia in respect to Azov regiments, and that's why they cannot allow those soldiers to be released? Well, like I said, before the exchange happens, we know nothing about the negotiations. The Russians obviously don't want to release them, but they still give some answer back, right? And again, we come to the meetings not just to sit in front of one another and argue, but we want to learn what's being offered by them and why they refused, how they justified what was offered, because we as families are not being idle. We constantly keep thinking about various models of release, and some of the Azov regiment soldiers have been released already. So in order to try and repeat it, we need to learn what's the price of their freedom. If the commanders and officers were released, but the ordinary soldiers, the rank and file on the battlefield, it's much easier to substitute those, but the most valuable assets, the officers, they have been already released. That's why I have no clear answer to this question. At the meeting with Andriy Yermak and Kirill Budanov, we raised the issue of quite notorious and ill-famous collaborants. Why shouldn't we repeat the Medvedchuk case back in 2022? And Andriy Yermak said that if they have some important and valuable information, why should we release them? And we said, well, of course, we are ready to exchange a collaborant even with valuable information for our loved ones, but unfortunately nothing has been done. All we can do here is making assumptions. They do treat Azov uniquely, but do we need to elaborate on this topic so that they would keep not releasing them? Because our job is for them to start releasing them. Hopefully, we raise very important issues here, and of course we wish strength and courage for the prisoners of war to persevere and to stay alive, and we would like to thank everyone who is involved in liberating our defenders, and I would like to thank and urge everyone to keep doing everything to release our prisoners of war, hopefully through the all-for-all formula. Thank you for this session. Stay with us. We'll work together for our victory and glory to Ukraine.